I can't believe this moment is finally here. Chris has been in the shed, creating and building the abandoned Tiger Avon at an incredible pace. And now that he has rebuilt the Pinto engine, for the first time ever, we're going to hear it come to life.
Here we go.
Oh dear.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another update on our Tiger Avon, Avon Rescue, and we'll show you what we've been doing. I know the car looks like it's in loads of bits at the moment, but there has been an awful lot of progress over the last little while, mainly tiny little bits. Just getting the engine wiring done, sorting out the engine cooling system, getting the carburetor level, getting the radiator mounted on the front. But it does now run. Yeah, I'm not going to try and kid you and say, oh, let's turn it over and you'll watch the marvel of it firing up for the first time, because we all know that's nonsense. What we'll do is in a little while, we'll show you that it does turn over, it does run. I can't run it for very long because we haven't got the radiator all hooked up yet, but at least we'll be able to hear the thing come to life. For the first time in 24 years, it'll actually breathe fire. So, and then what we're going to try and do, last time we did a how-to with the hammer forming, and I'd like to try and do the same again, but this time we'll do it with powder coating, because I've got a little home DIY powder coating system, and it's really good for doing little brackets and bits and pieces. So if I show you how I've done it, and then maybe you might want to invest in the same sort of thing. So that'll leave the intro for now. I might show you what we're going to do in details.
If you've been thinking of a project and might like to see a how it's done video, drop us a line in the comments section. And while you're at it, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and give us a like. Now let's get back to the shed.
Right, now we start looking at a few different details. One of the big changes is I've made the pedal box cover. Now it looks absolutely huge at the moment, because you've got to remember, I've moved the whole pedal box forward 5 inches from its original location. So it's hanging a long way into the engine bay. It's in bare aluminium at the moment, and it will look a lot less obvious once it's actually painted black or wrapped. We don't know which way we're going to go yet. But you can see now it's all in place, throttle cables in, choke cables in, both of which are working. So we've now got a complete control assembly in and working in the car. Everything's nice and firm. We've got a nice thick plate on the front, even though it's not doing very much. Its only purpose is to mount the throttle cable and close off the front of the box. Just behind it, you can just see the top of the header tank, which is going to mount on the bulkhead just next to it. And we'll go through what we're doing on the cooling system when we look at it a bit more. Now, while we've got the camera there, if you can have a look down, you can see we've made a heat protector plate for the brake pipes so we don't get too much heat transference. And I'm also going to wrap the exhaust manifold. So I haven't done that yet, but that'll be one of the other things to reduce heat transference from the exhaust up into the brake system. You can see down in the front corner here, I think you just about see that through, where we've got the alternator mounted. What we've actually got is one of the little Japanese miniature alternators. They're still 60 amp, but they're really tiny. If you try and use the Ford one, it's such a big unit in here, it hits against the side of the chassis rail. So I've had to make my own adjuster strap for it, but it tucks in there really neatly and gets it out the way. That's all hooked in. You can see the engine wiring is now in place all the way around the engine bay. But even though it's in place, it's not obvious. I do like to keep wiring looking nice and neat and tucked out the way of it all possible. And you can also see it's not wrapped in shiny black tape. It's a cloth-based tape called Tessa, T-E-S-A, Tessa tape, which you can get off eBay. It's self-adhesive tape, but it gives a much more manufacturer's look to the finished wiring loom rather than that shiny plastic that oozes glue after the first year. You can see also the beginnings of the heater rail, or the water rail, that comes off the top of the water pump, runs underneath the exhaust manifold and round to the other side of the engine. I'll cover that in more detail when we get round there. So that's this side. Right, and around this side of the engine, you can now see the fuel pipes hooked up to the carburetor. But one of the big ones you might not have noticed is the carburetor is now sitting level, because in here we've made a 3D printed angle spacer. Now it's 3D printed out of nylon, so it's fuel proof. It'll also act as a heat insulator between the carburetor and the manifold. So that's leveled that up so it should run properly at idle. Just here is our water manifold that runs from where I showed you round the other side of the engine, round the back, underneath and up here. so that the water circulates out of the inlet manifold, round and back into the water pump. And on the top here is a little air bleed, just so that when we're filling the system up, we can get the last of the air out of it. Just back from here, you can see the throttle linkage. Now, I could have used the original Ford one, which is a pressed tin bracket, but it lifted the cable up too high and it hit the bottom of the bonnet. So I actually made my own bracket here and my own control arms out of pieces of aluminium, machined out. And this second one here is for the return spring. So we've now got proper throttle movement. There's no free play on it, everything's nice and tight. We're on a single cable because we're only running a single carburetor. We haven't got that much load on it, but we have got dual return springs because an awful lot of motorsport people insist you have 2 throttle return springs. So we've got those on there. This little bit here that you can see is a temporary switch panel, so we can actually run the engine up. The big advantage of having it out here rather than running it off the controls in the dash is I can see exactly what's going on, and if I need to turn it off, I can do. I can work the throttle at the same time as I can work the ignition, and I can see exactly what's going on all the way around the engine bay. Right, now let's talk radiators. When I got the kit, you know, the whole idea was the budget build, and it came with a radiator. And I assumed, I don't know, so please don't think this is any accusation, I think this was a Tiger radiator. I can't be sure because it just came with the kit. What made me think it wasn't a standard car one was the angle on these bottom tubes. Fan switch at the top here, so it was designed to be fitted at about that angle inside the nose cone. But because it's only a single core, because it's this deep, the bottom end hung out the bottom of the nose cone. I think I showed you that in a previous video. So it gave me a worry about how do I protect this. Secondary, when it's sitting at that angle, you can see where this hose goes. So even if I turn that immediately into a straight, I've got an air trap all the way across the top of the radiator, which has no way of getting the air out. But I persisted with it. I made this mounting frame so that it would sit on the front of the car at the right angle, and it also mounted the rad fan. And I kept going until a point where I'm just about to order silicone hoses to make it work. And then realised I don't need this hose, so I was going to try and take this one out. And I tried heating it up to see if I could unsolder it to weld a little patch over, and the same here to get rid of the fan switch because I'm not going to use this style switch. And on a Sunday morning I suddenly thought, what the hell am I doing? Fighting this radiator to try and make it work. Let's go and have a look what else is available. So I went onto eBay, and would you believe, 60 quid, brand new, aluminium, well not brand new, sorry, new to me, 3-core thick, came off an old Chevron race car. So I know it's going to cool my poor little Pinto quite happily. So now we've got an aluminium radiator with probably 5 times the coolant capacity of this old copper one that fits inside the nose cone properly. Nothing's hanging out the bottom. Takes the electric fan really well. It's got the right size hoses. I did have to do one little modification for the lower outlet hose because it was pointing in the wrong direction. It was only a little one, there's nothing fancy, and you'll see that. What I'll do is I'll wait to show you that one until I've got all the pipe work on the engine, then it'll all make sense. But the real big advantages I've got now is better heat conductivity out of the aluminium, more thickness in the core, much better safety because it's not hanging out the bottom, and I know it's going to work and it's going to cool the Pinto really well. So for a 60 quid investment, I didn't really want to have to make, but it's not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. So this one now can be consigned to, if anybody wants it, it's yours for free, or it's going in the scrap, along with a mounting frame. And then we can move forward, knowing that it's now going to work. So let's see if she'll fire up again. So I'm not going to try and codge you this the first time, as there's no point. So here we go. Well, there you go. She lives, finally, at last. I've still got another little baffle that I can put on the exhaust if it sounds a little bit too loud, but we're getting about 50, 55 pounds oil pressure cold. Engine sounds sweet, there's no cam noise, so really pleased with that. Getting quite a bit of heat coming off the exhaust manifolds. They're not wrapped yet, so that's to be expected, but that'll help things down there. And we've still got to put the springs between the pipes and the collector, so otherwise it will just work itself off. They're the jobs to do while the exhaust is off. Okay, so let's wrap this one up now. You can see what we've done this time. Big steps forward, definitely got the engine running, which I'm really pleased with. Got a lot more under bonnet stuff done. Next time we're going to be trying to finish off the exhaust entirely by getting it wrapped, getting the retainer springs on it, getting all the engine plumbing done. I've got silicone hoses on order, they should arrive in the next day or two. We can get all that done. Once we get those sections on, I can then fire it up, set the time in and set the carburetor much more accurately than I can at the moment. I daren't run it too long at the moment. I'm going to start melting things. One of the other big still to do is to get the dash wiring finished up. So that might be the episode afterwards, so that everything then is controlled via the switches on the dashboard rather than my little temporary switch panel here. Still got to spray the wheels, still got to do the front wing stays because they're not sorted yet, still got to do the passenger seat. But a lot more of the other bits are now done, so getting a lot closer. We're now early November and we started this in late August, so we're coming along at a reasonable pace. At the very beginning I said I wouldn't mind it having finished by the new year. I think we're still pretty much on the cards to do that. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one. You'll come and see me again next time. I don't know how long it's going to be until the next update, but it won't be too long. And then if we can get it actually driving under its own steam on the next one, that would be a lovely place to be. But we'll try. So anyway, for now, leave you to it. Catch you again next time. Bye. Right, so for this time's how-to, let's have a little look at this powder coating. If you look at this, the top of the old air cleaner that we've scrounged off another car used to be really crappy old chrome covered in rusty bits. And in the space of 45 minutes, we transformed it with some satin finish powder coat into something that looks presentable. Now, if you look at these headlight bowls, these are for an old kit car that were rescued years ago. You can see on the inside they're a little tiny bit rusty, but the outside they've started to do the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to powder coat these to make them look as presentable for the rest of the car. Now, the way we're going to do it, there's quite a few different manufacturers of these home powder coating kits. And what you get is the static generator unit. You get what is effectively a spray gun. And you also get an earth clip. Now, the way powder coating differs dramatically from ordinary painting is it uses a static charge differential between here and the part you're trying to cover. And it uses it by creating an electrical circuit. So that's hooked onto there, the powder comes out of here and it's naturally attracted by static electricity onto there. That makes this powder stick on there. Then what you have to do is you have to then melt the powder so that it forms the proper surface coating on the outside of there. It's not an overly involved process, but it's one, there's a few rules you have to follow. Very much like painting anything, everything has to be degreased, has to be clean, you have to get anything loose and flaky off. The gun has to be cleaned out every time, especially if you're changing colours. If you leave the same colour in there, you get all kinds of little specks coming through all the time, which looks awful. You have to make sure you've got a good electrical connection between your ground and the part. Now we're going to put these on some oven racks. We'll show you how to do these in a minute. So the idea being, you've got an airline hooks on here. This is a little dryer to make sure there's not too much moisture getting through into the powder and making it go cloggy. Then you've got a pressure adjuster here. As you can see, I've written all the way over it, 15 PSI. If you try and put too much air pressure through these, you waste all the powder. It just chucks it all over the place. It should come out as a fine mist at best. So we'll show what the powder actually looks like in a minute. The last bit I didn't explain, this is the foot pedal. So that when you first turn this on, there, what you get is you get power to here, but you don't get any circuit. So if you touch anything else, it won't matter. The idea being you've got that in one hand, you put your foot on there, you generate the static charge between the two, do your spraying, and the moment you've finished, you take your foot back off again so that you haven't got this static differential that could give you a shock. So it's electrically based, it can give you a shock. It won't be a fatal one, but it's a bit like hanging onto an HT lead. If you do get a belt from it, it'll be a big crack and it'll make you jump, but that's about the worst it will do. So that's the theory and the outline of the equipment. The actual kit itself will cost you around £100, 100, 120, somewhere around about there. And these bags of powder are available from different suppliers at different costs in a huge range of colours. If you buy them from commercial suppliers, it comes in, I think it's a 10 kilo box. You're never going to get through that much in a lifetime. But these little packets for about 5 or 6 quid each, they're the right way of doing it. If I open it up, if I can, and show you, it's a clear plastic bag, and it's a very, very fine black powder. Sticks to your hands, goes bloody everywhere. But the important part is when you're spraying it, there's no fume because there's no solvent involved. It's just a dry dust. So all it does is it leaves dust on the floor, which you can sweep up afterwards. Okay, so that's the basic outline. We'll then start doing some nuts and bolts, get these on there and actually show you how it actually works. We're all set up and ready to go. We've got the airline connected, got the power pack turned on, got our earth clamp on this metal tray. That tray's resting on that tray. They're both metal stuck on there. You won't be able to see the foot pedal, but the idea being, as I hit the foot pedal, it introduces the charge, and then I can slowly dust the paint over the top of them. And I can come around here Right, so you can see it's really that easy. There's nothing complicated. And each time you take your foot off the pedal, it breaks the charge circuit, so there's less danger of doing anything. So then we've got the oven warming up. I can show you that one in a minute. Ordinary old second-hand domestic oven, plugs into a 13-amp socket, came off Marketplace for £25. No investment at all. So now we've got this stage done, I can put this down and we'll get the oven open. Okay, so it's cooking time. You can see we've just put the powder on a metal rack, so it's attracted to it. Here's our oven, good old-fashioned Zanussi, 25 quid off Marketplace, no money. So what we need to do is switch it on to main oven on 180 degrees for 10 minutes. Now we've got enough room, we've actually set these shelves up previously, but this one should slide underneath. If you bear with me 1 second, this one then slides in on the top shelf. Right, so that's it. Give it 10 minutes and we'll see what the results look like. Right, so here we are 10 minutes later. You saw what they were like when they went in. Now, this is why you don't want to do it in the oven at home, in the kitchen, because it won't make your sausages taste too good. And it's hot, but look at the finish on them. Look how lovely and shiny and clean they look. I'm going to go and get another welding glove, which is a bit thicker, then I can show you what they look like. Now I've got welding protection. So, there you go. Check those out. From a pair of rough, old headlamp shells to something that looks really presentable inside 15 minutes. I'll put this one down, I'll get the other one. There we go. Not too shabby at all. So now we're going to do all the other bits and pieces that go with them, because there's obviously the front rings and the spacers to go in. Okay, so this is the second lot coming out the oven now, which are the rings, and headlight mounting rings, which have both come out really nicely. Got the little mounting bases, so they sit underneath the ring to give it a nice finish look. And the last one that's in here made a new thermostat housing because the old one was rotten and I don't need to run a thermostat anyway for what I'm going to be doing with it. There's a piece of 15mm thick aluminium, a piece of tube machined, and some of my son's lovely aluminium TIG welding around the outside. He's bloody good at this stuff, he really is. So anyway, new thermostat housing as well. So hopefully that's inspired you to think, well, I don't have to pay everybody else to do this all the time. I can have a bit of a go and I can do some powder coating at home with a Facebook Marketplace oven, a little powder coating kit and a bit of time. So have a go. It might do much better than you think. You might use it a lot more than you think as well.
Thanks again, Chris. That was brilliant as usual, and we definitely learned a lot. Folks, if you found this video interesting, I think you will love our Avon Rescue series, and you can find the complete playlist right up here.